Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Cedric Geffen. I'm the President of March of the Living Australia, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening to another of our many online events. In 2021, we hosted close to 30 riveting online events, all related to the two core pillars of our educational mission: learning more about the Holocaust and Israel to ensure a better understanding of the past in order to create a better future for all going forward. And tonight's session, our sixth event this year, will no doubt greatly add to this wonderful repertoire. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we work and live, and on which this online event is being hosted today. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Tonight, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our guest of honor, Mr. Joe de Haan, child survivor in Holland, volunteer and mensch extraordinaire, who in conversation with my and Joe's dear friend, Cheryl Furman, will share with us some insights into his survival, his dedication to Holocaust memorialization, and so much more. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to hand over to Cheryl and Joe. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Cedric. Joe de Haan, everybody. This is the wonderful Joe de Haan. And we've got about 40 minutes where we'll be talking through your story, Joe. Over the last couple of months, we've been talking a lot about your extraordinary life experiences and things that have happened to you along the way that led to outcomes that you would never have foreseen. Are you able to sort of just start us off with a little bit of a background, where you were born and what life was like in Amsterdam?
Sure. Hi, Cedric. Thanks, El, for the introduction. My name is Joe de Haan. I'm born in Amsterdam, October 12, 1922. So you can work out how young I am. I was living with my parents, my father and mother. They ran a butcher shop, and I had an elder brother. He was 3 years older than me, and he was taken out of school at the age of 14 to work in the butchery full time. And that happened to me too. When I turned 14, I was taken out of school. In those days, there was not much emphasis on the education. Education was by the board. Yes, learning diamond polishing. That was the big industry in Amsterdam in particular. The Asher Company had a huge factory in Amsterdam, and all the Yiddish youngsters were learning diamond polishing. And that's what I wanted to do, but it was no good. I had to stay in the butchery, learn whatever had to be learned, and deliver on a heavy transport bicycle in the midwinter when the snow was half a meter high, push the heavy bike. And by the time I finished the round and I got home, I was crying bitterly, non-stop, from the cold and the misery and the pushing of the bike in the snow. It was horrible. I hated it, but I had to do this to support the family. That was an awful time. And
Tell us a little bit about your home. Where did you live?
We were living actually on the first floor above our butcher business. It was very primitive. There was no shower. There was no hot water cylinder. When you needed hot water, you had to heat it up on a 3-pit petroleum oil, paraffin stove to heat it up. And on a Friday, we went to the bathhouse, which was about 10 minutes walk. There was a big bathhouse near my school where we used to go, and for 15 cents, you got about a quarter of an hour there. And then there was a knock on the door of the douche, of the shower. Time is up, get dressed, and that is how it was in those days pre-war.
And then, Joe, you said that the butchery ran out of meat.
When the war broke out, a ration system was introduced. and people got coupons. And on those coupons for the butchers, they could get a certain amount of meat in weight. But it was too little, very little. And my father used to give the customers no coupons, and we got less and less meat because according to the coupons you delivered, you got meat supply again, and it ran short, and we got hardly any meat. It was horrible. And eventually, my father's butchery was closed. The wooden petitions against bomb explosions was put up in front when the war broke out, in front of the windows. And I remember my dad was turning into a gray, elderly man. He was so upset about the whole thing.
So Joe, so you closed the butcher, your dad closed the butcher, he boarded up the windows, and then all of a sudden you're telling me about a deportation list, and these officers arrive at your house one day.
On the May the 10th, 1914, Nazi Germany invaded Holland, Belgium, France, all on the same day. And after 5 or 6 days of bitter fighting, the Dutch resisted very well, but the Dutch capitulated on about the 5th or the 6th day, and the Nazis arrived in Amsterdam. It was a terrible time. The Jews were very upset, obviously. There were about 140,000 Jewish people living in Holland. And when the first German forces arrived in Amsterdam, there were some sympathizers, not many, who stood and greeted them as liberators. Well, there were no liberators because they bombed Rotterdam into smithereens. Just under 1,000 people got killed in the bombardment of Rotterdam.
God, that would have been scary.
So we were all very, very worried. But nothing changed. They didn't proclaim any proclamations. They didn't put a curfew. And everybody says, even amongst the Jewish population, no, it's not so bad. Look how they're behaving themselves, you know. They used to, when they arrived in Amsterdam, they used to throw sweets for the kids from the tanks and the transport what they used. So everybody was starting to relax, in particular amongst the Christian population of the country. We were always very worried, but nothing changed until around about maybe May 1941. I can't remember dates, but anyway, we got an identity card. Everybody has to have an identity card if you were over 14, I think, or 16. And when we collected our cards in the school, actually it was my old school where I used to go to, and officials, maybe 10, 15 in a long row in the gymnasium hall, sitting there, and they were all Dutch, not a single German in sight. So you got to the table, my father, mother, my brother, and me, we gave our name. He pulled out the cards, and before he handed us the cards, he looked on his paper and he took his stamp he had next to him, and he stamped each card for my father, my mother, my brother, and me with a big J. J for Jew. That was like a death sentence. If this man, this Dutch man, would have said, Joe, here's your card, goodbye, nobody would have been any the wiser. And it would have saved.
You would have lived freely.
And you could have lived freely because you were not qualified,
stamped with
a J.
Yeah.
But in our case, my father, my mother, my brother, and me, we all got a stamp in the identity card, a big J, J for Jew.
So tell me, Joe, about the deportation list.
Well, nothing changed in the first year, 1940. No deportation, no nothing. But beginning of 1941, there was a section of Dutch scumbags in black uniform. They were called black police. They were all Dutch. They had uniforms. They carried a small pistol on a leather belt. And every night after curfew, 8 o'clock was curfew for the Jewish people. You were not allowed after 8 in the streets. From 8 to 6, curfew. So during May or June, or I'm not quite sure about the dates, but one day after curfew, must have been about 8:30, 9, there was a ring on our door. And I remember my brother was already in a work camp. He was called up, he was in a work camp in Holland. And there was a ring on our door, as I said, and I went down the stairs and opened the front door. The front door. 3 of these Dutch scumbags passed me on the stairs into our flat. And my father was in a state of shock. It was 1942. My father was remarried. I lost my mother in 1941, but he remarried a year later. And one of these louts had a bit of paper like you have here, and read out Michel de Haan. My father said, yes. Je persoonsbewijs, paper, your Ausweis. So he showed it.
Showed the ID document
Yeah,
with
ID,
a J.
ID. And when he showed it, of course, I see his name in there and address and the J stamped on it. You're under arrest. I was standing right next to my dad. He was 56 years old. In good health, worked all his life, never harmed a fly. You're under arrest. My poor dad said, I can hear him still say it. Arrest what for? What for? Oh, we don't know, you must come. And one grabbed him by the shoulder, and the other one read out my stepmother's name, Clara de Haan Bril. She said, yes. Identity card, showed it, and within minutes, they were down the stairs, gone. Never saw them again in my life.
Wow. I mean, that's quite something to see. And then what happened to you? Because you were 19 at the time.
I was
on your own.
I was on my own. The butcher was closed. I had some money, not much, but in any case. And I stayed in our flat. Was a rented apartment. Everything is rented in those days. Very few people had own property. Only in the better situated areas where people bought houses, but where we were living, everybody was renting. And I don't know, I stayed in our house. The butcher was closed, as I said, and maybe a day or two, or the next day, I'm not sure, a friend of my father heard about what happened to my dad, and he came over to me. His name was Maurice, trompeter, in Dutch, trumpeter. And he came over and he said, come with me. We still free. I don't know how long we will be free, but at least come with me. You have something to eat and you can sleep with us. You can't stay just by yourself. I accepted his offer, went with him. They were living in a street called Krugerstraat, after Paul Kruger.
Wow.
The whole area had South African names.
That's odd, hey?
Krugerstraat, Paul Kruger, the president of South Africa. Anyway, in the Krugerstraat, number 34, on the second floor, was Maurice and his wife and his son living. So I went there, and after a very short time, maybe a day or 2 or 3, I don't know, I can't remember, it's so long ago, Maurice told me they're going to Friesland in hiding.
Where was Friesland?
Friesland was in the northern part of Holland, right north where the islands are. It's right north, and the North Sea is there as well.
So to get out of the city and get away from what was happening
So
in Amsterdam.
Maurice said to me, I'm sure that when they're coming to fetch us, that they'll take you as well if you want to come. I was so nervous. I said, let me think about it. I don't know. I was so upset with everything. I couldn't think straight anymore. Anyway, a couple of days went by, maybe 2, 3 days, I don't know. Indeed, 2 men came from Friesland. They only spoke Fries, which is not Dutch. And they came to fetch to fetch the family, Maurice's wife Leah and the son. And I said, I'm not going. I was so nervous. I was so scared. I'm not coming. Not that I had any plans. I didn't know what to do. But they said goodbye to me. They walked out of their beautiful home, a lifetime of memories, left everything behind. Didn't even take a suitcase, because walking with a suitcase in those days was trouble, because the Gestapo was everywhere. And they stopped people carrying suitcase or whatever, you know. So suitcase was taboo. And I slept in Maurice's second floor apartment for a couple of days, when one evening there was a knock on the door. I opened the door and there was the tall lady standing from the first floor. I've seen her and greeted her once on the stairs when I saw her. She was there standing. She said to me, "You come right now with me downstairs. You've been here long enough by yourself. Come." And she grabbed me by the shoulder. She was a big, strong person.
This is
And-
Mrs. Soeters from the Salvation Army.
And she was a lady of the Salvation Army. Her name was Soeters. And I stayed. She took me in, and there was a small bedroom. She put the children together, whatever arrangements she made, that I could sleep there. And she looked after me for quite several, I don't know exactly how long, but quite some time, maybe even a few weeks.
Is that when the guys came back for the clothes?
That's right.
Ah,
Then one day while I was there was a ring on the door, and there were the 2 men who taken the family trumpeter to Friesland. They came back for some clothes, suitcase of clothes. And at that stage, I plucked up enough courage and said, "Can I come back with you guys to Friesland?" They said, "Yes, you can." And they told me what arrangements. You don't talk to us. We don't know you. Follow us on the distance. Where we go, you come. No talking, no recognition, no nothing. And that what happened. I came back a couple of days later for the suitcase, with the clothes. And I was ready. I said goodbye to the Soeters family. And I followed them to the station. We walked. They got a ticket for me. Or I got a ticket. I can't remember. It's so long ago. And I went into one of the coaches. I followed. And we stopped at a place called Enkhuizen. That's in Holland. And then we went on the ferry, which took us across to Friesland. We landed in Stavoren, that's in Friesland, and then by train to Leeuwarden city, the capital city of Friesland. And there I went into a taxi and I followed. And I don't know where I went, but we stopped somewhere, a farm, and there offloaded me. And I went on. And it was a husband and wife. And
so you got to a farm.
a farm, 2 children were there.
Yeah. And you said the wife was quite nervous.
And I noticed that the wife was very nervous and hardly said a word to me, and very worried looking. And I thought, what the hell's going on? Only after the war I found out why. And anyway, I stayed there a very short time, maybe a week or 2. And then I was fast asleep one night. I didn't venture out of the farmhouse. I stayed inside all the time.
So this was the second farm that you went to,
No, the first
the
one.
first farm, right?
Oh, the second one.
farm.
The first one was in a different place, but there we were only a day or two.
Then you got to the
And
second farm.
then we went on the bike to the second farm in a place called Genum or Genum in Friesland, where the Vermeulens family, that was right. And she was very nervous, and I couldn't understand. Well, I could understand now. I realized I'm very scared of being caught with somebody like me. Anyway.
So about 3 o'clock in the morning one day, you
And
hear
then
these guys.
one day, in the middle of the night, before milking time, I wake up from knocking on the window, boom, 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 boom. And I hear voices from youngsters. That Willem, that was me, I was Willem.
So your name changed.
My name changed. I was Willem Walvis.
From Joe de Haan, you became Willem Walvis.
Walvis means a whale. The Yidden in Holland had a lot of animal names. My name is also an animal, a chicken. So Willem Walvis, I was now Willem Walvis. Knocking on the window, I wake up, that Willem, I must get out quick, the Nazis are in the village. So I shot into my clothes and bolted out of the farmhouse. Now, just imagine a farm with flat country, not a single light anywhere, no moon, no nothing.
And you don't know where you are.
So I stood at the back door. I knew that that there was a bit of a canal at the back, about maybe 20 meters from the house. And there was a huge plank over, which he used to walk over to get onto the lands. Pitch dark, and me on my hands and knees crawling, and I felt the water, and then I went left. I thought, let me go left. And I thought, no, can't be, I must go right. So I crawled the other way, and then I found the plank. So I crawled over the plank, and then I just ran and ran and ran far away from the house. And it didn't take long when I heard in the distance, like a lorry, no lights on. They switched the light. When I noticed them for the first few seconds, I saw lights. And then they drove without lights, no lights on. And believe me, Cedric, they stopped exactly in front of that farmhouse where I just bolted from. They ransacked the house.
Who were the guys who betrayed you?
I'll come to that.
Okay.
And I was gone. They knew my name because when I arrived in Friesland the time before, I had a card. Every single human had a card given by the council with a name. On that card, you could get ration coupons. It didn't indicate that gave you name and address, but not were you a Roman Catholic or a Protestant or a Jew, nothing. And I gave that card to obtain ration coupons to the leader of this organization. And so now I escaped. I was far away from the farm, and it started getting lighter very slowly. It was early morning, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock, I don't know. It was dark. And when I ran away, eventually maybe 200-300 meters away from the farm, there was a bit of a dip and a gate in the ground. So I thought, well, this is far enough. I lay down and I hid in a dip in the ground. And I heard a lorry. I saw the lights. I switched it off, and I stopped right in front of the farmhouse where I just escaped from. After the war, I found out, I made it my business to find out, the leader of that group, so-called resistance group, the leader, he calls himself Van Dijk. His name was Van Dijk. That was not his real name, but that's what he called himself. Apparently, he was sitting in a lorry with the Nazis pointing out this farm, that farm, this farm, that boat, and Maurice and
The trumpeter
the
family.
Trumpeter family were caught that night. They were in a boat in a river. They were amongst the people who were caught.
So the guy who was meant to be saving you betrayed you.
He betrayed us all. And afterwards, I got 3 books here, what Michael found in Seattle in a second-hand store in Dutch. 3 books about the situation in Friesland.
And that's Michael is Joe's son.
My son
And this Van Dyke is mentioned in that book as
in
the
the book
traitor.
as a
Yeah.
traitor. And he was sitting, according to witnesses, although it was in the night, it was dark, who swear that I saw him sitting in a lorry. And he was pointing out this farm, that boat, and about 12 Jewish people, amongst them Maurice, his wife Leah, and Gerry, the son, were amongst the 12. There were about 12 Jewish people.
So Joe,
that
you're
night.
saying that they basically got paid by the Germans as well as the underground, so they were making money on both sides.
That I'm not aware of.
Right.
I'm sure the Nazis gave them, but the underground, I don't know.
Right.
I don't want to make a statement
What we're not sure of.
what I'm not sure about.
So can I just go? You were lying in the ditch, and all of a sudden you heard somebody running.
No, that was already when it started getting lighter.
Right.
And I was still in the meadow when it started getting lighter, and the lorries were gone, or lorry. Obviously, at that stage, I didn't know if that somebody else I knew was caught. And but Vermeulen's farmer didn't want me back in the house. I fully understood, so I stayed in the meadow late, and there, out of the mist, it was already afternoon late, I saw some movement and shouting. Somebody was shouting. I thought, who the hell is that? And when it came nearer, I realized by his diction that he came from Amsterdam. And he said, I'm Appie Rijksman. His name was Abraham Appie Rijksman. I didn't know him from Amsterdam because there was a big, huge population there. So you don't know everybody. So I remember saying to him, well, let's stick together. Then you support for me and I'm support for you. Let's see what. He said, yeah, but I'm going back to Amsterdam. I said, don't be crazy. You're crazy. Look at me. Here in Friesland, they're good. People are good in general. Wait and see what happens.
So you then, a farmer comes along.
And then after getting lighter, another farmer came out of the mist. His name was Klaas Dreyer. And he said, guys, you see that building there? Right there in the distance was a building now, an old building. It was a storage place, quite big, with a double story, with a big ladder in front. He says to me, and Appie, go there. Here's a stick. He gave us one of those poles, what you put in the canals to jump the canals, like a pulse.
Like a pole vaulter.
Pole vaulter. He gave us one. He said, go there, stay inside, don't move. I'll take care of you. Off you go. So the 2 of us off to that building was about at least 1.5 kilometers away, quite far. And the door was broken. We got inside. It was nice, pretty good temperature. There was a long ladder. Up the ladder, up on top, there was straw and hay and a lot of stuff there where we could make a bed. And there we, obviously after a day like that, we fell asleep. I woke up early in the morning by some noise. And when I looked over downstairs to the door, I see two small kids. It was half light, half dark. And I called to the kids, I'm coming downstairs. So I went down the ladder, and I had a basket. Mama sent that for you boys. There was bread and milk and butter and cheese and eggs, hard-boiled eggs. And
So you basically were at their mercy, and these kids came about every second day.
I brought
Yeah.
food. They were
And yeah, they
amazing.
brought food, and they were really and I mean, you trusted class because you had no option.
No, we had no option.
And in the end, you found out that class
Brother was the leader.
brother was the leader of the underground. So
Right,
thank God,
right.
because that kept you safe.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, now there's decision being made, and you and Appie have formed a very strong bond.
Yeah.
You've only got each other, and you guys have to split up.
Yeah. No, after that we were together in that barn. One day he came and he said, I'm going to split you guys up. You're going to one farmer, you go to another. I'll come tomorrow night after dark and I'll fetch you.
Yeah.
And Klaus came and he took me to a farmer. Of course, I didn't know where it was, all in the darkness. And he took Appie somewhere else.
So that would have been quite scary, because you now are again on your own.
Yeah. And I was placed with a farmer, a farmer and his wife and two sons. And there was a young girl working, milking. It was a big farm. And I had 24
Dairy cows.
dairy cows. And there was a girl working, Pearl, and the two sons, the three of them did all the milking. Every morning at 4 o'clock and every afternoon at 4 o'clock after the calves were all born on the stable. They used to sell the calves off and all that. It's quite an industry. And the milk was being fetched by a lorry from the factory every day. And I get paid according to the quality of the milk and the amount of milk. And when I got there, I said to Pearl, the girl, I can do that. I didn't want to stand by and be a watchman. So, bless you.
Thank you.
And I said to Pearl, next session, how far are you? I said to her, how far are you now? She said, I'm nearly finished. I said, well, the next session, so you show me. So I took over the next time, and she was very, very happy.
Well, I'm smiling, Joe, because what you haven't said is that you are a city boy who knew nothing about cows and milking.
No, I didn't, but it was short nails that you don't hurt the animal. And
you watched.
And I watched, and the next time I did just as good as all the two brothers. So Pearl was very happy. She could sleep late now to 7 o'clock instead of getting up at 3. And I was happy that I can contribute something. And I did every morning and every afternoon. There was Willem. Willem was doing the milking.
So that was you in your overalls.
In my overall.
As the farm hand.
And it was good for my mind. I had a purpose. And the farmer's wife, when she saw me in the morning early, about 8, she was busy making fire and making breakfast. And there was a big farm. And in the distance, in the hall, main hall where the hay was packed, she used to, when she saw me, she came running over, gave me a big hug. She really was amazing.
So this was a really lucky opportunity to meet these people and to get the love.
Unbelievable.
And they treated you just like the other children.
So now the summer comes, there's enough hay and on the fields again, enough grass, I mean, on the fields. So the day comes to let all the animals out. They got certain parts of land attached to the farm. and they're taken to where most grass has grown. They let them all out, 24. All the calves who were born on during the winter time on the stable go also out, and they know nothing about outside. They are wild because they're scared to go out, and then once they're over the outside the door, they scream and they run like idiots. About 10 or 15 or 20 calves, all the young were born, and they run into trees, bang, snack, full blast. They don't know what trees are. It was a shame. Anyway, then the big cleanup starts. I did help with the cleanup, and then there was no work inside. That was all done. Took about at least a week to clean the whole place out. And so then I decided, what I'm going to do is sit here on the whole day and do nothing. So I said to one of the sons, the elder son.
That was Johannes.
That was Johannes. I said, find me a spinning wheel. I said, I'll try my hand on a spinning wheel.
Well, where would you have gotten wool from?
We had sheep.
Yeah. And so you decided you couldn't go outside during the day, but you had to stay inside. You had to stay indoors because it was too dangerous to go outside.
No, I didn't want to run any unnecessary risk. So I stayed inside. So when I mentioned to Johannes, the one son, find me a spinning wheel. He said, you think you can do it? I said, you bring a spinning wheel. We'll figure it out. And it didn't take long. There he came with a nice spinning wheel from somewhere and a frame. And we had wool. The wool got to be greasy, very greasy. If it's dry, you can't use it. It's got to be greasy because you pull it. It's got to be.
So you did all of that, and you made enough wool for jerseys for the whole farm.
So it took me about a day or 2 days to master how this thing works. What did a Yiddish boy know from a spinning wheel? And I made unbelievable wool. So much so that she supplied all her family and friends with wool, because all I did in the daytime make wool. And she was a fantastic handy knitter, unbelievable. And she knitted for her husband, for Jan, for Johannes, for Sibren, and for me. She knitted jerseys, and no pattern. She just put it on your body, and she knew exactly how
much it was going to fit you.
Amazing.
So Joe, so that wool that was used, we used for your invitation for tonight's talk, a picture of you with the mittens.
The mittens, that was wool I made.
There we go.
And my late wife was a fantastic handy lady. She could do anything.
And so she knitted. She knitted the mittens.
She knitted the mittens for me.
Yeah. And then those mittens are now at the Jewish Holocaust Museum.
Hopefully they'll display them.
When they rebuild the building, hopefully they will. So now, that's the picture of you with the mittens.
Yeah.
So that was from the wool from the farm, knitted by your wife, and now in the museum. So Joe, we're just about running out of time. So the thing that is really also fascinating, I want to jump to how this amazing family then were, through your family's input, became the righteous amongst nations at Yad Vashem.
Michael, my son, who lives in Seattle, was instrumental. That we got to honor them. I said, of course. And he put in action the application, and the ceremony was held by Yad Vashem representatives in a nursing home where one of the daughters of the farmer was still alive. Then in 2010, I think it was, or 9, and there was a big ceremony, the representatives of Yad Vashem and from the embassy from Israel were there in the aged home where the daughter of the Rosier family
In Amsterdam,
in Friesland.
in Friesland.
Friesland. And I saw it live on my computer. It was broadcast.
Unbelievable.
Michael organized it, I saw it. Of course, at that time, I was too old already. I would have loved to be there, but my age was not permitting me to do that.
So Cedric, there's so much more to say, but I think the timing now is that you'll probably hand over to you for some questions.
Yes, clearly we've only touched the tip of the iceberg, and but there's so much that hasn't been said. I've obviously shared a little bit of that with you over the last few weeks. I don't have any questions that have come in from the audience, but in the meantime, maybe let's take another few more minutes and maybe just go back to the story of Joe going back to Amsterdam and what happened with the clothes, etc. There, maybe that's worthwhile touching on.
Okay.
When eventually the time came when trains and buses were riding again in Friesland, and it must have been a couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks after the liberation, and all the work was done, I stayed on the farm because the one son, there were 2 sons and me doing all the work, and one son got polio in his leg and was laid up, and he had a limp. He had treatment for weeks. It never came right. He always had a limp from the polio infection he had in his leg. So I felt my duty to stay on. I couldn't leave them in the lurch with all the work, the cleaning and everything. So when everything was done and it was time now, I can go. Okay, I arranged, Monday I leave. The Monday came, Farmer Jan went to his little money box, opened it up. Here, Willem, here's some money for you, for the trip and whatever. He gave me 100 guilders, which was a lot of money in those days. And I took the bus and the train back in Amsterdam. When I stepped out of Central Station, the main station in Amsterdam, I thought, where shall I go? I never knew anything about Auschwitz. I never expected that I wouldn't find perhaps my father and my brother. And I walked all the way from Central Station. In case you've been in Amsterdam, I'm not sure. Have you ever been in Amsterdam?
Yes.
Then you might remember Central Station. And I walked all the way to my street. And on the way on Rembrandt Square, the main square, popular square in Amsterdam, Rembrandt, I see a man and I said, oh my God, there's Julius. And I shouted out, Julius, and he stopped. He said, yeah, that was my brother. I'm Leon. I said, oh my God, you look so alike. He said, yes, I know. And I said, what about Julius? And he looked at me and he said, where have you been? I said, I just came from Friesland. I was on a farm. He said, well, walk with me. And the story I'm going to tell you might upset you very much. He was already several weeks back from Auschwitz or wherever he was liberated. He was in awful camps. Anyway, he tells me that everybody is dead. I said, what are you talking about? He said, haven't you heard of Auschwitz? I said, no. He said, well, your brother, your father, your mother, and everybody who is not here in Amsterdam is dead. I was shocked. I couldn't believe.
So what Joe, when you were saying on the farm, they had a radio, but you had to hide it away.
Yeah, we hardly ever listened to it.
Because you could have gotten killed for, they could have gone to the
Yeah,
concentration
it was
camp for being,
was dangerous. People talk, you know.
And so you never actually knew what was
I knew
going
that.
on.
I knew the invasion started because Klaus Dreyer, my contact, who took us from one place to the other, he came over. He said the invasion started in France. They heard it on the radio, and so I was absolutely off the map when Leon told me about what happened. So I said to him, what are you doing? Where are you living? He said, I'm staying with some friends, the druggers in Vrolijkstad. Now, Vrolijkstad was just around the corner where we used to live. And I know the druggers because Beppie, the daughter, was at school with me in the same standard. So I said to Leon, I know Beppie. He said, you know the family? I said, yes. Well, come with me. So I went, I trotted along. I met the family drugger. She was a German, non-Jewish lady. They were intermarried, and that's what saved them. They never prosecuted the intermarried couples in Holland. They left them alone. And then I heard from them that Barend, my so-called stepmother's brother, survived. Barend Brill. He lost his wife and a set of twins and 3 kids. And I heard, they told me he was alive, so I looked him up, and he directed me to his brother-in-law, who was intermarried and never prosecuted, in New Church Street. I went there, and they put me up under the roof. They had no place in the house. Anyway, I took everything in my stride. It was hard, and from there, I looked for a job, and eventually I found a job, although they told me, we'll see by Friday what we can pay you. And the Friday came, I worked there from Monday to Friday. It was not very busy shop, kosher shop. And Friday came and they paid me like peanuts. It was so little. Now I was already, in 1945, I was 23 years old. No education, no schooling, a bit of butchery business I knew. So that's why I got the job, but they paid me peanuts. I said so, my gosh, this is, we can't pay you more. We just started a few months. Anyway, it was hard. And then I met my future wife at a place where the remnants got together. At a certain place, what was a billiard saloon before the war, and now after the war, it was used by the survivors to come together, have a cup of tea, and exchange information. And the topic of conversation by most of them was, do you know anything about my uncle this and auntie that? Everybody was hoping that somebody would find out something about family who still was alive. I did that too. And at that place, I met my future wife.
Julie Clydesdale, thank you for your comment, because we're heading straight there. So Joe, the hall was called the Icebreaker Hall.
All right.
And you walked in, and the very first time you walked in, you were looking for people that you might know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get in there, and there's this table of 10 women. And the one woman who's sitting there is this very pretty girl.
Yeah.
Who's Beppie. And Beppie's family.
Rebecca.
Beppie was Rebecca. And her family had the poultry shop just down the road.
Correct.
So you go up to her because you're so excited to see someone that you recognize.
Oh my God, it was so emotional.
I'm sure it must have been emotional. And you have a big chat and you learn a little bit more about what's gone on. Yeah. And sitting at the table is?
Right there, about 6 girls of the Phillips group. Cyril, eh?
Yes.
Cedric.
Cedric. You haven't heard anything about the Philips Group ever?
I heard from you, but it is a fascinating story, Joe. So if you wouldn't mind, and if the people are willing to continue listening, this is an amazing story that involves your wife. So please go ahead and tell us.
The Philips Group was an organization from Mr. Fritz Philips, who during the war spoke with Austerfunten, Ferdinand Austerfunten.
Who was that?
He was the leader of the SS.
Yeah.
And he says he wants to set up a factory in Vught, concentration camp. Now, Vught happened to be about 5 kilometers away from the Philips factories in Eindhoven. The Philips electronics, they're huge. They make all kind of medical equipment and everything. And Mr. Fritz Philips said he wants to set up a factory in Vught. And Austerfunten said, fine. So Mr. Fritz Philips organized the machines and everything. And then 350 girls he wanted, young girls with good eyesight, to come and work in that factory. And my future wife was one of them, was accepted. They were tested on the eyes. And her sister was rejected, shame, who died in the Auschwitz. And Seal and about 350 other girls went to Vught concentration camp where they worked for Philips. Philips organized the food, everything. So they were not undernourished, they were looked after well. And 2 days before the D-Day, June the 6th, on June the 4th, the whole factory was emptied out and sent to Auschwitz. When Mr. Fritz Philips heard the next morning in his office in Eindhoven, Eindhoven is near Vught, heard what happened to his group, he was very annoyed and he spoke to Austerfunten, why you do that? And apparently he says he had orders from higher authority that must be sent to Auschwitz. So it took a couple of days and they went to Auschwitz, and I think they all got a number. Yeah, Seal had a number, small tattoo. And they were in Auschwitz maybe 4 or 5 days. And then the whole Philips group was sent to a place called, what was it called again?
I don't remember. Let's just see, because we didn't say a whole lot of it. Yeah. We didn't write down the actual name, but it was a camp.
They sent her to a camp, all the girls, where they stayed for a couple of weeks. I don't know if they worked there, and then they eventually ended up working in different places, and they shifted them all the way from Poland west, and they worked here and there for weeks, and they ended up near Hamburg in a camp. When Earl Bernadotte, the Swedish diplomat, heard that there was a group of Dutch girls near a camp near Hamburg, he approached not the Gestapo, he approached the military generals and told them that there's a whole group in a train, they're all about 350. Let them go to Sweden. I've arranged they can come to Sweden now. And the general said, sure. And they put trains available, and they were all loaded up on the trains. They went from near Hamburg via Denmark onto the ferry, and they all arrived, reception by the Red Cross from Sweden, with coffee and food and sandwiches and Christ knows what at the station. There were at least 100 workers from Sweden. That was at Malmö, not Gothenburg, Malmö. And they were taken to a camp, beautiful bungalows with showers, and they were there several weeks. They were fed well. The Dutch government in London said the girls can go shopping, they can spend, say, $1,000 for clothes, and they all went shopping. They bought whatever they needed. They had nothing. And then after not Göteborg, what's the other place I mentioned?
Malmo.
Malmo. After Malmo, they were transported to another better camp in Göteborg, and there they were free to go. And during the day, they got money from whoever supplied them. I don't know, but they were able to go shopping and go out a bit, the girls together, and eventually, after I think 4 or 5 months being there, they still made friends with some Swedish family, Inge-Lise Stenborg. Inge-Lise had 2 daughters, and they were in a nude swimming area for women only. Yeah, it was nude.
You didn't tell me that before.
Yeah. And in the summer, it was nice warm weather. Everybody in the nude, they came and had costumes on, about 10 of the girls from the group, from the Philips group, and I see them all naked. So they all ran back and out.
That's cute. So she was well and she had time to recuperate.
Yeah.
And then you actually meet her
In-
sitting around the
at the
table
icebreaker,
at
yeah.
the icebreaker
Yeah,
hall.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there was Beppie was in the next table, and when I saw Beppie, she cried. She was a beautiful woman, a magnificent woman, lovely to see. And
But unfortunately, because of that, Mengele,
Mengele worked her over.
yeah,
Bastard. What he did to her is, when she told me, she cried. It was
shocking.
terrible.
You can't imagine the horror that she would have gone through.
And but she did marry him, but of course never had children. And so there I met my future wife, and she was living with a small room at a friend's place, and I was living then at that stage in a boarding house. I was just about scraping by, and I met her, and she liked me. I liked her, and
you took her to the
I
movies.
took her to the movies.
Yeah.
We went to buy a ticket. Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
It was goodbye, Mr. de Haan.
Yeah. And anyway, so we got married by the chief rabbi of the Netherlands. He was a very tall man. And then my wife had 1, 2, 3 sisters, of which one sister survived the war. Very smart, very articulate, very, she was top in nursing, had all the degrees in nursing, mental nursing, normal nursing, obstetrics,
Obstetrics,
OFR,
lungs,
ostrich.
lungs.
No, not ostrich. Anyway, she had all the degrees in nursing, and she was in Holland in the best hospital in Amsterdam, the biggest. And she had a friend in Israel who also was in the same profession, very smart girl, was in Israel, in Beilensen Hospital, she was. And she wrote to Lien was her name. Lien, you must come to Israel. We need you. We're in the war, the first war.
War of Independence.
War of Independence. You must come. We need you. So she spoke about it with her superiors, and they begged her not to go because next year you will be in line to be the matron of the hospital. She was a very, very smart girl. Anyway.
So, there is a question here, which is more than a question, but I suppose even a request, and that is, the question is, have you published any of this? Because this is an amazing, amazing story, and we've only heard the edge of the iceberg. So have you written your memoirs down? Where can this be found?
Elections again.
So we've got a work in progress.
Yeah, I got
You
recollections.
got recollections of what happened during the war between 1930, I guess 33, or does it start in 39?
Maybe
30,
38, 39.
so the essence of the story is in a number of different places. What I think we'd like to do is sort of take this story and just branch out on a number of the different areas. Joe has been interviewed by a number of people. 1935. So this is something that Joe has done, and there is a short story, but it doesn't have all the details of the life, the life stories that we're telling now. I guess, Cedric, if we want to have another session or two, there are so many more amazing stories that can unfold.
Absolutely. So this was absolutely fantastic, and we could sit here for hours, but unfortunately we do need to call this to an end. So I apologize for cutting this short, but unfortunately we do need to limit it in time. So at this stage, on behalf of everyone here, and it's testimony to the amazing stories that just about every single person that logged in is still here with us at the moment. So on behalf of everyone that's here, I'd just like to thank Joe profusely for sharing with us some amazing insights into his life before, during, and after the war, and to Cheryl for facilitating and initiating this heartwarming and thought-provoking discussion.
So Cedric, I just want to say that very quietly and privately, Joe's son, Michael de Haan, has been listening to your story, Joe. It must be about 3:30 in the morning in Seattle, Michael. So if you want to come on and just say hi and show your face, that would be great.
I'm here. There we go.
Oh,
yeah. You're not going to see my face because I'm in bed, and it wouldn't be good. It was lovely. It was nice hearing Dad's story again, and I think your idea of having maybe a few more sessions, because there's some lovely nuances which we could talk about in the background, and we could bring out next time. So well done.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us at this godforsaken hour, and thank you for sharing your dad with us. So I'd just like to, before, and we certainly will follow this up with a subsequent event, but before bringing the evening to a close, I'd also like to just mention that it is our custom after each event to seek your feedback via email in an attempt to continuously improve and grow the knowledge base. So if you have any topics or presenters that you would like us to include, please let us know. Our next event will be on Sunday, the 12th of June at 7:30 p.m. and it will focus on the Holocaust in Lithuania and the continuing stance of the Lithuanian authorities to downplay and in fact deny their role and complicity in the atrocities of the Holocaust. The speaker, Michael Kretzmer, is dedicated to combating this outrageous stance by the Lithuanian authorities, and he's produced a documentary highlighting the issue in all its ugliness and shamefulness. Please look out for the exact details and register on our website, www.motl.com.au, and our social media. And for those of you who may be interested in joining us for our return to live March of the Living Journeys, we will be back up and running for a bumper 2023 delegation to Poland and Israel, marking 80 years since the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, 75 years to Israel's independence, and 35 years of March of the Living. Save the date, 17th of April to the 1st of May. And for more details and to express your interest, once again, go to our website, motl.com.au. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great evening. And thanks once again, Joe and Cheryl. It was tremendous. Thank you and good night.
Everybody, that was great. Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.